So we have a bit, I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of a disclaimer today. I don't know if it's important, but I really should. I'm going to just throw it out there. Sometimes scholars, sometimes theologians, sometimes pastors, when they discuss things, they kind of do things like proxy battles. You know what a proxy battle is? A proxy battle? Okay. So like in history, there are times that maybe two countries are enemies, but they don't want to go directly to war with each other, because if they go directly to war with each other, a lot of things are destroyed. So what they'll do is they'll find another place and they'll do a little war, and they'll do the war over there. So like during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union didn't want to do World War III, but what they did is they would do something like maybe Nicaragua. The Russians would put money on one side and we put money on another, and the little war would be playing out there. Or Vietnam. The Russians would put money on one side, we put money on the other side, and there's a little proxy battle. Sometimes, theologically, we also have proxy battles where folks are arguing a doctrine, and they argue it, but the reason that they have all the passion that they're arguing there is really there's another argument that they're making in the background that they're fighting here. One of them, for example, sometimes is called the literal argument. Like, people will argue about the literalness of the Bible. And so they'll be talking about literal figurative argument will be the literal figurative argument, but what they think the real argument underneath it is the truth and reliability of the scriptures. So then somebody that really wants to believe that the scripture is reliable might argue on the side of literalness, thinking that the person that's arguing figurativeness is arguing figurativeness because they think that it's a mix of truth and untruth. Does that make sense? So, let me just make this clear. If I ever say something is figurative or maybe figurative, meaning it may not be literal, I am saying it's figurative on purpose because it's conveying a truth. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes we don't use the literal truth because we want to highlight the big truth. Like, let's say that let's say I worked really hard yesterday and I was working all day long, and I talked to you and I said, man, I worked like 1,000 hours yesterday, right? You just heard that I worked really, really long, and you got the truth that I'm trying to convey. I highlighted that because usually it's like, I worked 1,000 hours yesterday, and now today I really don't feel like I have energy. So I'm highlighting how much I worked yesterday to emphasize how, does that kind of make sense? So I'm not lying. As a matter of fact, if I gave you the literal truth and I said, I worked 10 hours, 57 minutes, and 22 seconds, I'm not improving the story. Does that make sense? So sometimes some of these things could be a little figurative. Like, for example, it may not literally be 300 noses that Gideon takes with him. It might be 3/3 of 1,000. Roughly thirds. That's 300. But that's 333 people. Okay, great. 333 people. That's not 300. Okay, here's the point. It's a small number compared to tens of thousands, right? Yes. Okay. So we're making a point that it's just 3 companies versus zillions and zillions.
Well, lots of times in Old Testament, there's reasoning behind the figurative language.
Yes.
It's not just like I worked 1,000 hours yesterday, but then there's like significance to why you
use that number.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of that. Really.
Yes, because it rings the bell.
Literal and figurative, but just because there's figurative doesn't make it untrue.
Doesn't make it
There's
untrue.
usually greater significance to that figurative language.
And sometimes it really is 300. And sometimes, but the sense of the story usually hangs on the truth, and not necessarily the literal truth. Oh boy, did he just say he doesn't think the Bible's literally? No, I think the Bible is truth. I think we have the Bible we're supposed to have. I don't think there's a mix of error. I think it's true.
Both and.
But I think where it's figurative, it's important that it's figurative because it's a way to highlight for the reader to go, hey, look at this. Now, why all of this? Why this disclaimer? Because sometimes the names may not really be the names. Sometimes the names may be an indicator of who the person is. And sometimes their names might have ended up, so sometimes it's hard to think. So like, for example, here's a good one. Who knows who Benedict Arnold is? Uh-oh. Benedict Arnold was an American general who sold out the American Revolutionary War and became a traitor, sold it out. He was an American hero, one of our first heroes in the Revolutionary War. And he sold it all out to be a turncoat. So, Benedict Arnold became a turncoat. So much so that people stopped naming their kid Benedict.
Well, it's a slang term now for a traitor.
It is now a slang term for a traitor. So some of these names, you're like, is this meaning? It has this meaning. So there's sometimes, the question is, which is cart, which is horse, right? But then there's other times when we tell the story, we might replace the guy's name with traitor. So the traitor came down and he did this because we emphasize what he's going to do. The Bible uses that, and sometimes, like I mentioned last week, the bedspread of the translation sometimes covers these threads, so we don't get to see the quilt quite the way that we would in the original translation.
Well, that's more often than not the names, whether that was their actual name or it wasn't. Just about every name in the Old Testament, it's got meaning.
Yes.
Every single one of them has meaning to it.
And not hidden meaning.
Right. That to the original readers would have been right there.
Yes. The original hearers would have heard this a lot more like, and I hate to use this oversimplification, but the classic Indian names. The classic, who is that? Well, that is Walking Buffalo. Like right on the face. Not something that, that sounds like a walking. No, it is like, your name is Manslayer. I bet you this is going to, and we've already seen this. Gideon means to cut off, or to cut up, or to be discarded.
And then they renamed him
to Baal.
Jerubbaal.
Yes.
Jerubbaal. Thank you.
Right? He's like Baal will judge him, which Baal's bane, or whatever, in that sense of it. Right on the surface of who he is. So the names are we're gonna go over that. And I've been hitting this drum a lot, haven't I? So we're going to continue. We're going to back up, back a little bit into. So we did the first half of Gideon's life. We're launching into the second half of Gideon's life. First half of Gideon's life, right? We see him. He started out in a grave, right? Wasn't that where he was at? He was in a wine press, the bottom of a wine press, like hiding, making bread, which is like a warrior's job, right? Is it a warrior's job to make bread? No. So that's kind of how low he is. He's pulled out of the grave, right? Because the angel of the Lord shows up and says, mighty hero, you're going to be a mighty hero. So, what's that?
He goes,
nah. So, but he just goes out, I don't think I'm a mighty hero. God shows him how he's going to be, and then he trains him and teaches him and raises him up and gets him faith. So we've seen him do he's gotten all these people come in because he now stands up as a leader and says, hey, we're going to push out the Midianites. 10,000 people show up. Or actually 30,000 people show up. And then God says, this is too many. It's too many so that Gideon knows that God's working with him because God is growing Gideon's faith. So he's like, send away anybody that's scared. So 22,000 people dip out, right? And then he's down to 10,000 people. Okay, we got 10,000 versus 130 or 150,000, whatever. And they're like, well, that sounds good. Well, God says, too many. And then he divides them up into 10,000 into 3 companies. Then there's 3 companies. It's like 300 people. So now he's got 300. Now, is there any way that 300 is going to be able to defeat the tens of thousands?
Not in any worldly manner.
There is no way in the world, and that's the point. The point is the number is so small that it is impossible for them to do that. So, and the Bible repeatedly uses this figurative language, and we're going to see it again. If it says more than the sand on the seashore, is it literally that? Because that's like a Googleplex. Probably not a Googleplex, but a lot. That's the point. So picking up, if you read verse 7, where we're at, the Lord told Gideon, with these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home. So Gideon collected the provisions, the ram's horn of the other warriors, and sent the others home. But he kept the 300 men with him, which is probably good because they're going to be on an extended expedition. So they, as opposed to a weekend's worth of stuff, now they have a couple weeks worth of stuff, which is what they needed because the battle's actually going to be a couple weeks long. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon the night before the Lord said, get up, go down to the Midianite camp. I've given you victory over them. But if you're afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant, Purah, right? Purah, whatever. Listen to the Midianites, what they're saying about you. You'll be greatly encouraged and you will be eager to attack. Okay. Bunch of stuff. First of all, man, last night I chased a rabbit for about 45 minutes just because I did something that I should have done a while ago, which is really cool. I was looking, and I'm not going to chase it. I promise not the 30 minutes. It's coming though. Because all of this, oh my gosh, if you look at a map, I'll show you. It'll come out. Oh, that's exciting. So, Purah, is this a proper name? I don't know if this is a proper name because it means offspring. So I don't know if this is a name or a title. I think general context is I think it is his son. Why? Because that plays a role later on when his son lets him down. There's a sense that his son is here in the midst of it. So I think that this isn't I think this is a title, not a proper name in that sense. Does that make sense? Because if we read it and it said, and your servant, your firstborn, you'd go, oh, I bet you this is his son. Like if I said, I went out with my firstborn, you would say, oh, my servant, my firstborn, and you go, oh, Ricky was probably there with him. That's the sense of it. Does that make sense? Not important so much, but it does kind of add to, considering the story that we're going to go next week is going to talk about kind of the offspring of Gideon and the huge failure that happens. So recognizing that they were positioned not to fail kind of highlights that. So that's what we say. So that's why I would say Purah, I think we probably should look at him as the seed of Gideon. So he's there and he hears the story too. So Gideon took Purah over and went down to the edge of the enemy camp, and the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people in the east had settled in the valley like a swarm of locusts. You're like, how big is a swarm? Well, a swarm is 6 million. It's not literal. It's like a whole bunch, right? And the camels with grains of sand on the seashore. Well, that's a Googleplex. It's not a Google. It doesn't matter. It's a bunch. More than us 300 people can take care of.
It's commonly used figurative language throughout.
Yes. To influence.
Throughout the Old Testament, but throughout the people of that age.
Yeah. And we do it too. Again, I worked 1,000 hours last week. You didn't work 1,000 hours. There's not 1,000 hours a week. Okay, you're right. Felt like it though, right? That's the sense. Gideon crept up just as a man was telling his companion in a dream. I had this dream. The dream was a loaf of barley bread came tumbling down over the Midianite camp. It hit the tent and it took out, knocked everybody flat, right? Just because we remember how we first found Gideon, he was making bread. I mean, he was getting flour for bread in the wine press. He's hiding out in the hole. There's kind of a neat little thread just to see, but the idea of a loaf, does a loaf knock over a tent? Not normally, but neither is 300 people going to defeat hundreds of thousands, or over 150,000 probably. His companion answered, your dream can mean only one thing. God has given Gideon son of Joash the Israelite, victory over the Midian and all of his allies. Then when Gideon heard this, the dream of its interpretation, he bowed and worshipped the Lord. He returned to Israelite camp and he said, "Get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianite hordes." He divided the 300 men into 3 groups, and each man he gave a ram's horn and a clay jar with a torch in it. So what's happening is they're going to have the clay jar so you can't see the torch. So then they're going to have a horn, and they're going to, spoiler alert, they're going to break it, show the light, and they're going to blow the horn. What does this mean? A clue that they gave a chapter and a half ago was the shofar, the horn was used by the captain of a village. So if you have 300 captains, and a captain would be like 100 people. So if you've got 3 captains, then you got 300 people. But if you've got 300 captains, then obviously the army must be 30,000, right? So that's what it's going to see. It's going to seem like it's 30,000. Now, okay. So we look and we go, oh, that's very logical. He's so logical. He's gonna win by logic. Okay. All right. Now let me turn this around. At what point is 300 people going to be able to slaughter 100,000 people? None. Oh, but they're really smart. Yes. But let's just talk about like the mechanics of swinging a sword and killing. Let's see.
And they're armed with trumpets and flashlights.
Yes. Trumpets and flashlights, right? And then what they're going to go down with their sword and they're going to start swinging it at people. And you start doing the math and you're like, so if each person kills 3 people, that's 1,000. So if each of the 300 kills 300 in that day, well, they'll get about 90,000. And then the last 10,000 will kill you. Well, that's kind of big, right? Now here's the deal. I just kind of want to make this point that as cool as Gideon is, and he is good. He's cool, right? Because he's brave in doing this. Do you realize he's got 299 people that are like, I think Yahweh is going to be with us. Understand, everybody in that church, right? Everybody standing up on that hill, willing to go forward. As much as we give Gideon, we probably ought to say, hey, those guys had some faith too. Because looking down the hill, that step is a pretty amazing thing. So
that's a decision. They chose to be there.
They chose to be there. They had 3 outs. Right? And you know what? The math never worked. The math never worked. So that's the sense of it, right? So here you go. Keep your eyes on me, he said. In other words, as I'm faithful, be faithful, right? Which also kind of mirrors what we see with Joshua, right? Joshua gets from God. He gives to the people follow Joshua. So we see the obedience in the 300, and that is the remnant. God says there's always a remnant. Who's the remnant? The 300. Even in Israel, there's 300 men that are ready to do spiritual warfare. And by the way, make no mistake, this is spiritual warfare. Oh, it's a freedom movement. It has nothing to do with politics. Everything to do with the battle of gods. I'll show you later. It'll show up as we start looking at the threads underneath the bedspread. Right, so they as soon as you hear me blow the ram's horn, blow your horns too, and all the entire around the camp, and they shout for the Lord and for Gideon. Right, it was just after midnight at the changing of the guard when Gideon and 100 men were with him were on the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew their horns and broke the clay jars. Then all 3 groups blew their horns and broke their jars. Hey, got a question, just to give us the scope. What's the population of Traverse City? I feel like 100,000. Is that a good number, or am I just... Less than that?
Yeah, because Petoskey's only 8,000, depending on the year.
So,
Yeah, it's about
Elmira is
6,000.
like 1,500.
yeah. I'm trying to think, what do we know that's 100,000? What's the population of 100,000? Grand Rapids. 300 people around the town of Grand Rapids. We're going to kill everybody in Grand Rapids, all 300 of us. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Then you got the right scope. Yeah, but they each had a horn. Yes, you're right. Because that reminds us of what's the other story where they blow horns? Joshua. Now, in the Bronze Age, if you got really good bronze, got a really good bronze stick, and you're looking at a wall made of bricks or rock that's tens of tons. I think they even have some that are like 40, 50 ton rocks. How hard is it to break a 40, 50 ton rock with a bronze stick? Is there any world? Well, they used sonic weapons they got from aliens. No, they didn't use sonic weapons they got from aliens. God was involved there. God's involved here. We're supposed to see that. There's no way they're going to do it. This isn't. But they have a super weapon, right? So they held the blazing torches in their left hands, and they shouted the horns in their right hands, and they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" And each man stood on his position around the camp, and they watched as all the Midianites rushed around in panic, shouting as they escaped. They're like, "We can't get away! They're all over the place!" They start, "Well, I'm going this way," and then "You coward!" They start hacking at each other. When 300 blew their horns, the Lord caused the warriors in the camp to fight each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled in place as far as anybody want to try that word? Oh, I was like, hey, you try to avoid it. I know you're trying to avoid it. Near Zerah and the border of Abel. Well, okay, some interesting things. Okay, there's that temple. The Temple of the Acacia Groves. Hey, I remember that story right before Jericho. That's where they started out, was in the Acacia Groves. This right here is the brook of the baptism. When were they baptized? Well, right after they were in the Acacia Groves, they went down and crossed the Jordan River. And it was a picture of baptism. Isn't it interesting that we're seeing kind of that story layered out there? I think that's amazing, right? Also reminds us that these people should have been trusting Yahweh in the first place. Same God, same victory, same thing. We serve the same God too. Oh, but the world's falling apart and it's the end times and we're never going to be able... Listen.
It's been ever since then.
There's been a spiritual war going on since the garden. And we have the power of the Holy Spirit. The gates of hell are not supposed to prevail against the church.
Well, the church is on the offense in that too.
We're supposed to be in the offense. And we are supposed to be in the... You're right. All right. So, when Gideon sent for the warriors of Naphtali, Asher, Manasseh, who joined in the chase, the armies to chase the armies of Midian. Okay, I'm going to do this for a second. See that little ridge line right there? Right here on the top of that ridge line, in 1,000 years, is a village called Nazareth. The end of that ridge line right there, that's Mount Tabor, where people were worshiping Baal and doing those sacrifices. Right down here is Mount Moriah. Boy, these are all places in the New Testament where Jesus is doing all this spiritual battling and driving out demons in the same place. Right over here, Megiddo. Right in the valley right there, where Armageddon happens. That same valley, there's a river, Kedesh. That's the river where those chariots were drowned. All on the same place. You mean that battle that Joshua fought and the battle that happens later on to Deborah and Barak happens on top of this? Yes. You mean where Jesus is doing his ministry in Galilee? Yeah. Body of water over there? Any guesses what that big body of water is right next to it? Sea of Galilee. Is that interesting? Boy, I was playing with this for quite some time last night. I'm not going to play with it. I was just pointing at the map. All right, Gideon also sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down and attack the Midianites. Cut them off at the shallow crossing of the Jordan River at Beth Barah." Okay, guys. Ephraim. These are the descendants of Joshua. They're the descendants of Joseph. Here's the sad story. The descendants of Joseph are already falling into rebellion. This place right there is in their area of control. It is the area by which the Midianites were coming in and victimizing the rest of the northern area. That gate should have been blocked by the Ephraimites before this even happened. That's their line. That's their area. We should go, wait a second, why weren't they guarding the gate? They were hiding in the hills. But that city should be theirs. It should be. Now, this is even worse. Anybody want to guess what Barah means? Again, the temple of Barah. Oh, that makes me nervous. Beth Barah. This is the place of the dead. Hell. Whether or not they're worshiping the god of the dead there, or whether or not they're just worshiping Hades. Wait, you got a temple devoted to the death god in the middle of Ephraim? Yup. I think we got an idea of why they weren't guarding that, because they're on the wrong side. But these are the descendants of Joshua. Yeah, but Joshua's several generations. Sure, but you know what was in Ephraim? 2 chapters ago, Ephraim is where Shechem is at. Ephraim is where Deborah was from. Barak was from up here. Deborah was from down there. When they had everything controlled, and we're like, oh, there was this great golden time up north. 7 years they've fallen apart after Deborah and Barak were gone. Boy, that makes this really bad. You mean 7 years that revival went away after Deborah and Barak went, and it didn't last for 7 years? It didn't hold them for 7 years. All the men of Ephraim did as they were told. We always love to hear it when we say, oh, they did what they were told. They captured Oreb and Zeeb, the 2 Midianite commanders, killing Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. And they continued to chase the Midianites. Afterwards, the Israelites brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was at the Jordan River. Now I kind of think this is cool. These commanders' names. I wish we wouldn't transliterate. I wish we would translate it because their names are kind of interesting. Oreb means raven. It's not a name that's like raven. It is literally the exact same thing as raven. His name was Raven. Yes, just like that. Zeeb means wolf. So he's the wolf and the raven. Why is that important? Because those are the images that you would see at death.
Say scavengers.
Scavengers, places of death after battle. Not good things. And they're being destroyed, right? Because they have been feeding off of Israel. Oh, but they could have got life in prison. No, it's not about that. It's about judging them. The judgment is important. Because these guys were the victimizers. They were the oppressors. We think, oh, it's justice. It's more than justice. It's spiritual freedom. Because what would happen is, the way a king worked in that time, and the way it kind of still works, is that God, the God of them, Marduk, he invested in somebody, their king. He wasn't just a king, he was a high priest. He was a symbol. He was an idol. Oftentimes he would claim descendants, like a half-god, a demigod. And then all of the people prayed to him. All of the people worshipped him, or worshiped the God through him. Does that kind of make sense? So there's a sense that killing that king frees the people They then have the ability. It's very much like breaking the idol. They then have the ability to go elsewhere. Yes,
It's like the demon-possessed man.
it is.
When he's freed from that demon possession, he's free to go worship.
Yes, and if he doesn't, just like Jesus said, if you don't replace it with the right thing,
Then the same spirit's going to come in.
same spirit is going to bring other friends in. It's going to be just as bad. And that's the thing. There's a chance, there's a sense that killing the Midianites frees the Israelites that are enslaved to the Midianites and gives them yet another chance to submit to Yahweh. It also frees the Midianites, by the way, because the Midianites are also descendants of Abraham. Abraham had, besides Isaac, he had other sons, including Midian.
You follow most of them back far enough.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Afterwards, the Israelites brought their heads. Okay, so that's good. So that judgment happened. Then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when we first went out to fight Midian?" In other words, they're looking at the loot saying, "Why didn't you let us in? Why weren't you doing your job?" You had one job. God had entrusted this area to you, children of Joseph. You were supposed to guard the gate. And because you did not guard the gate, for over 7 years, we have been victimized. And they're wondering why they're not getting medals. We should have got medals. We should have got money. Why are you doing this? This is one of those things where you're like, ah. So the trajectory from Joshua to Ahab. You guys know who Ahab is? Not Ahab, the Arab. No. Shiva, the burning sand, or what's the Ray Stevens song? No, there's a Ray Stevens song. Anyway, Ahab, the evil king of Israel. The trajectory from Joshua to the evil king of Israel is already on course. So they argued heatedly, right, with Gideon. And by the way, the sense of this argued heatedly is like, we're going to kill you, Gideon, because you have the audacity not to include us. This kind of arguing is the same kind of arguing where they were going to kill Joshua and Caleb because they're like, oh, we could take it with Yahweh's house. There's a real vileness here. But Gideon replied, what have I accomplished compared to you? In other words, just like, look at the medals you get, right? Aren't the leftover grapes for Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of the little clan of Abiezer and of my clan? Like, my little piece of Manasseh is nothing compared to what Ephraim gets, right? God gave you victory over Oreb. You got the 2 great generals. Remember, the honor was in killing the generals. That was like Jael, right? Jael was the one that killed the other general. It was taken away from Barak because he was afraid. And they're like, you're right, we did get the big medals for winning the war. And they puff up their chest. The commanders of the Midianite army, and they accomplished, compared to that, and the men of Ephraim, they heard Gideon's answer. They said, you're right, and we got all this loot here. Is the job done? No. But it is for them because they already got their honor. So all those tens of thousands of people that are plundering, that came back, they stay in the land. They don't follow Gideon. You know who follows Gideon? The remnant. The 300 faithful. Gideon crossed the Jordan River with his 300 men, and though exhausted, they continued to chase the enemy. Why? Because that's what they're supposed to do. Because this is a spiritual war, and they're on it. When they reached Succoth, I just love saying Succoth.
It's fitting.
They suck it.
Succoth's here, which is ironic, because Succoth is not supposed to Succoth, it's supposed to be rest.
Yes.
Succoth is like a tent, like when you go to a tent for rest or a hut for resting. Succoth plays a role in the story here, because we're seeing a repeat. Gideon asked leaders of town, give my warriors some food for they're very tired, right? Because they've just been pursuing. What's tens of thousands of other people? Hey, they're back with a loot. These 300 men are fighting the battle, God's battle, and they show up. By the way, Succoth is a Jewish town. It's a town in Gad. So here comes the Jews that are coming to free everybody. And what does the town say? He says, oh, here's some other names that I think are interesting. I am chasing Ziba. Ziba means like slaughter or the slaughtered sacrifice, which I think is kind of like one of those double meaning things. Because it's like a sacrifice that you would do. Suleiman is an interesting name. There's debate about where it comes from. I'm not sure which thread because there's two. There's one that there's a Hebrew meaning that I think it might be, or it might be a translation, or sorry, transliteration. You know when I say the difference between translation and transliteration? I'll just say it over again. Translation is where we turn it into English words. So when we turn it to acacia groves, is it, oh, an acacia tree, it's an acacia groves. That is translation. Transliteration is we're just trying to make the same sounds in our language, or we call it shitta. Right? That's a transliteration. This might be a transliteration because the name is really close to Tiamat. Tiamat is the serpent god-ish of chaos, of the Babylonians. So it may be that he is the representative of Tiamat, and that's why he's called that. The serpent god of chaos, you're like, oh, I know a serpent god of chaos. It's almost like we got a serpent god of chaos painted on the wall recently. Right? Or, literally, it could be like the shadow or the idol of a god. But either way, the guy is he is the name of a god as his representative, or he's the idol of the shadow of the god of shadows, or the god of this. So you're like, well, either one of that's not good, right?
Either way, he's representing the god of that land.
Either way, there is a religious element to these names. A spiritual religious element. The kings of Midian. But the officials of Succoth replied, catch these guys first, and then we'll feed your army. Okay, you're starving, you come out of the desert, you show up to a village, and you need supplies, and you're like, you need supplies, they're like, okay, defeat the army and come back. By the way, they've seen who's come through the army. A few thousand people have come through with the army. The army that's gone through before them is somewhere in the 15 to 20,000 range. So they're looking at 300 people, they're like, okay, we'll get right on that after you defeat them. It's kind of funny, you need water. Succoth, where's Succoth? Succoth. This played a role in, Succoth is a place that was, when Jacob comes back to the promised land, and is afraid of Esau. There's that point of potential civil war, where he meets Esau. Succoth, he found Succoth there. Place, they set up their tent and they meet and that sort of stuff. It's this place that really should have given support, but instead they did not. So this shows the rebellion that they have. So then he says, okay, I will return and tear your flesh with thorns and briars from the wilderness. Does that sound nice? No, because they're consigning them to death in the desert. Imagine a guy shows up without water or food, shows up to your city, and you're like, well, you go finish the battle and then come back, we'll give you some water. They're figuring they're going to die in the wilderness. So the judgment is bad. Now, why the thorns and flesh? Here's that picture. Remember, God said he was going to leave these followers of the other gods in the area, and they were going to cause them to be like thorns and briars. So there's a sense that they have chosen the God of the Midianites over the God of Yahweh. So they're going to get that judgment. From there, Gideon went up to Peniel and again asked for food. And at the same time, he got the same answer from the people of Peniel. After you return from victory, I'll tear down your tower. Okay, some interesting stuff there. Peniel. That's another place. Well, what does that mean? Peniel. What does Peniel mean? Peniel means the face, pene, of El. The face of God. Back to the story of Jacob. When he comes back to the land, he wrestles the angel of the Lord. And he's like, I've seen his face. And he calls the place Peniel. It's where Jacob wrestled God. The place is known for that. This is where God and man met. And this is a place where they're supposed to be looking at the face of God, but they're not. And I suggest to you, tower. I think in this word tower, and I've looked, a lot of commentators run different directions. There's a lot of people that are like, the tower is a military defense and their hope is in the military defense. I think it's more than that. I think it's wrong for us to wholly discount the supernatural element of it.
I was gonna say, I thought it was a temple.
I think temple is a better sense of it, because the very first tower that we see in the Bible is a temple. The Lord is my strong tower is also the same kind of idea.
And looking at the overall context throughout the Old Testament of spiritual battles with the gods of the land, and he goes in and wipes out the
Yep, absolutely.
It fits.
There's a sense that they're like, we're strong enough with the tower, we don't need to depend on you. Even the Babylonian God says, go forth and subdue the land, right? Go express. And they're like, we built this tower because we have this tower. God can't drive us away. Can't make us do what he says us to do. By this time, Zeba and Zalmunna were in Karkor with about 15,000 warriors. So now you're saying that's the Petoskey in summer?
Yeah.
So we got the population of Petoskey during the summer, right? All remained of the Allied army. 120,000 had already been killed. Gideon circled them. They're like, good, we got 300 people. We could circle Petoskey. By the way, it's like much bigger than 10,000, right? We're like, oh boy, these guys are pretty bad, right? They're like, "Arr. If God's with us, we're going," right? That's the sense of it. And they still win. Gideon circled the caravan. These are ragtag people that were already tired when they crossed into the Jordan. And they've pushed miles in. And that makes me think, by the way, that distance where I was going to Megiddo and the distance to Tabor and all that sort of stuff, that was like 5 miles. Isn't that amazing? So if Jesus grew up in Nazareth, that would be like growing up here. And the Mount Tabor that all these battles happened at, or these battles at the foot of the mountain that happened at, would be like the gaslight. Isn't that interesting? I'll just throw it out there. All right. Getting circled around the caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbeh, and taking the Midian army by surprise. Zeba and Zalmunna and the two Midianite kings fled, but Gideon chased them down, captured all of their warriors. After this, Gideon returned from the battle by way of Harris Pass. We don't know what that is, how literal that is, or how figurative that is. It's the idea that, because the name sounds like it's a really difficult pass, a treacherous pass. So it's kind of like he snuck in, kind of come back around. And he shows up to Succoth, and he makes it really Succoth there. And demanded that he found a guy right there, demanded to write down the leaders, the 77 officials and elders of the town. And what he's going to do is he's going to kill them. But he spares the town. He kills their leadership, but he spares the town. Why? Because it's the tribe of Gad, and he's not looking at erasing the tribe of Gad. So this is the bigger town, so he really just kills the leadership. Here at Zeba, right, here are Zeba and Zalmunna. When we were here before, you turned to us and said, catch Zeba and Zalmunna first, and then we'll feed your exhausted army. Then Gideon took the elders of the town and taught them a lesson That is a euphemism, if ever I heard it, because he punished them with thorns and briars. Oh, you mean he put a briar crown on them? The sense of it is he probably dragged them to death through the bushes. Not a good way, right? Well, they were consigning their Israelite brothers to death when they left them without water. So that's kind of the justice of it. He also tore down the Tower of Peniel, which is why I think it's important that he tears down the tower, not because it's a military thing, but because a place that's named after the face of God is not working toward the face of God, it's now working toward Baal. So he tears down the tower. I think we see that obedience. And he killed all the men in the town. What did he do with the women? He took the women. They became his wives. I would argue that that's probably the place where Gideon, you start going, hey, Gideon, this is a problem. Should Peniel have been judged? Absolutely. But multiplying wives is not necessarily the best idea. Then Gideon, and it's going to come up. It's going to come up next week. When Gideon asked Zebul and Zalmunna, the men you killed at Tabor, what did they look like? And they replied, they all looked like a king's son. And he says, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. Gideon exclaimed, as surely as the Lord lives, I wouldn't kill you if you hadn't killed them. Okay. There's some interestingness in the weaving of the quilt here, because the question he asks and the question that they answer are two different questions. And they're distinctly different questions. So a translator has to go, well, is he asking this one question, but it's understood that it's this other one? Do we get the meaning behind it? Because he literally asks something like, where are the men that you had? And they're like, we killed, or the men that you had at Tabor. And he said, and they answered, we killed them, and each one looked like the king's son. Does that make sense? So that's kind of hidden within it. And the idea is that he doesn't know that they're dead because they weren't killed in battle. That these people had been killed at Mount Tabor. Why? Because they were human sacrifices to Baal. So as they've been victimizing people for the last 7 years, they've been coming up to worship at Tabor. So what did they do? Well, they grabbed local boys and butchered them. That's the sense of it. So a lot of commentators turn around and they're like, well, he's the kinsman redeemer kind of thing, or he's the blood, this is a blood feud and this is bad for Gideon. No, this is absolutely right for Gideon. These guys are practicing human sacrifice of Israelites. We should 1,000% be on the side of Gideon. We should. Oh, Rick, you're just too rough. Be more kind and gentle. That's not what we're saying here. There's a judgment that has to happen. Well, I'll come to it here in a second. So he turns to his oldest son, Jether, who, by the way, curious, Jether, actually that's his name probably is a variant, or he's named Jethro. His name is the same name as the first important Midianite we see, which is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. So he's named after a Midianite. Isn't that interesting? His oldest son, and he says, kill them. But Jether didn't draw a sword. Is this a strength or weakness of Jether? Ooh, a lot of debate here. For he was only a boy and was afraid. Okay, a lot of people turn to say, and you go, but he's a gentle spirit. Doesn't matter.
David.
Compare him to David. David slays a giant. Why? Because that's what he's supposed to do. And the reality is this: the leader of his tribe is Gideon. If Gideon dies, if he has a heart attack at that moment, if he died on this trail, Jether's in charge the very minute he dies. Oh, but he's so young. Yes. But God doesn't care about young or old. It doesn't matter. This is a failure. We're supposed to see it as a failure because it shows up here. First of all, they make fun of him. There's a sense where what he does is he gives an honor to it, and it's honor. Because the person that would be slayed by an equal. So he's saying, you're the equal. Which is why when Jael, the servant, right, the foreigner living in the land, kills the commander, it shows that she is superior. This is elevating him. The other reason that you don't kill a king is because they're representatives of the god. It's like breaking the idol of a god. That's why he's afraid. I don't want to kill the representative of Baal because Baal's going to be after me. Or the chaos serpent's going to be after me.
I wonder about the translation for boy. Because depending on the translation, sometimes it's young man. And there's a difference between a child and a young man.
Well, he is not a child. How do I know he's not a child? He's part of the 300.
He's a young man, but he's not a child. So
Yes.
it's not like sending a 6-year-old in there to do it.
No.
He's a warrior. He's of
No.
military age.
And then he is at least of military age.
Yeah. So he's not a child.
Not a child. And then when it says, be a man, kill us yourself, that what they say is really something more of the strength of a man. It really is kind of like questioning, it's kind of like, you don't have the balls to kill him yourself, is kind of what he's saying, but it's a little bit more than that. It's like, listen, your offspring is a coward, you're a coward. Because from your loins, there's a lot of things we can learn. I will tell you this: we with Gideon's dad worshipped other gods. Gideon is good because he turns to Yahweh. It's not a genetic thing. It's not a line of kings that Gideon is. It's about your relationship. And listen, if you have a solid relationship with Christ, that's fantastic. But it is on the next generation. They have to make that same choice. As for me and my house, will serve the Lord. Be a man, kill us yourself, they said, right? Okay, so I'll come back to this. We'll come back to it. I told you we should be in favor of killing these guys. Why? Well, because the psalmist says so. Psalm 83, let all the mighty nobles die like Oreb and Zeeb. Who are those? The raven and the wolf. Let all the princes die like Zeba and Zamu. This is a song that we, the church, are supposed to be singing. For they, and here's the reason why, they said, let us seize our own, for our own use, the pasture lands of God. They were victimized. They thought that they were good enough to take from God, so because of that, they should be judged. As a matter of fact, you go further verses down, it says, utterly disgrace them until they submit to your name, because this is the reason why. Let them be ashamed and terrified forever. Let them die in disgrace. Wait, well, how can we be praying, let enemies of God die in disgrace? Finish it out. Then they will learn that you alone are called the Lord, and you alone are the Most High and supreme over all. There's a sense where their disobedience needs to cost them because our desire is that they learn Yahweh is superior to all. Okay, this is like political adjacent. I'm just going to throw it out there, political adjacent. I really enjoy Senator Kennedy. If you guys know who Senator Kennedy is. Senator Kennedy just makes up the weirdest analogies, and they crack me up. Like one of my favorites that he said, and I'm not remembering who he said it, but the analogy was great. He said, I trust him like gas station sushi. And I was like, that's brilliant. Give me a pen. Let me write this down. He said something this last week that, whether or not politically you agree with him, there was a theological truth that I was like, oh, I got to write this down. He was talking about something. He said, stupid should hurt more.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's brilliant. That stupid should hurt more. So that we don't stay stupid. And it was funny because this happened the same time that I was looking at 1 Samuel, and there's that point where the ark had been conquered by the Philistines, and then all of a sudden everybody, like the gods were bowing down before the ark, and everybody started having boils and tombs and rats and plagues, and they're like, let's get rid of the ark, send it back to their land. Stupid was hurting them.
Pain is educational.
But they chose the wrong path. Because the stupid wasn't that the ark was in the land. The stupid was they were choosing to worship not Yahweh in Yahweh's land. So their idea is, let's get the ark away from us, as opposed to let's submit to Yahweh. That was a third option. Had they picked that one, the story would be different. That's why the judgment has to happen. The stupid has to pay so that somebody goes, wait a second, we need to stop. Suffering is not always bad. Suffering is not always bad. Sometimes it's to tell us we're being stupid. Sometimes suffering is to harden us and prepare us. Sometimes suffering is boot camp because God is preparing us for something even bigger. Sometimes suffering is from our stupidity. So we can't just say, oh Lord, let all suffering stop. No. Let us be in the season that you want us to be. Let us be successful, growing, and trusting in you. The Israelites then said, and this is why it's important to know the failure that was happening. This is when the Israelites said to Gideon, be our ruler, you and your son. You mean the son that wasn't man enough to do what he had to do to protect his people. You need to kill these kings to protect your people. I can't do it. Dude, they were tied up.
Is the grandson the son of that son?
That would be the sense. The sense is that we're giving it to your line.
Which gives all the more, like, he wasn't that. This wasn't a child.
Not a son, not a child. Child.
He's got a kid.
He's a child in the sense of he's acting like a child, but he's not acting like a ruler. For you have rescued us from the Midianites. But Gideon replied, I will not rule over you, nor my son, for the Lord will rule over you. So here, multiple generations past Joshua, they still understand their king is Yahweh. The rest of the world, the representative of God, and then the people swear allegiance to the representative of God. In this land, the people are under God. The king is Yahweh. Politically. Nations, usually the army, the military, swear allegiance to a crown, swear allegiance to a person, swear allegiance to a Lord. That's even how we've done it for 2,000 years, even since Christ. A break with that was the United States. When we decided we did not have a king, who do we swear allegiance to? We swear allegiance to an idea, the Constitution of the United States. But why? Because the Constitution of the United States is the idea of a union underneath the Creator. A more perfect union underneath the Creator. What the Founding Fathers were trying to create is this, where they were at, where we have no king but Yahweh. Does that make sense? That's why we swear to the Constitution. That was our plan. Now how it works out doesn't always work out. Right? But that was the idea. That was on paper idea. That's what, so Gideon is still doing the right thing. I have one request, that each one of you give me an earring in your plunder that you've collected from the fallen enemies, the enemies being Ishmaelites, all wore gold earrings. Literal, figurative, what is the symbology? Okay, some translations will say gold crescents. Because it's like if you see the camels, like even now, the Arabs will have camels that have the gold moon thing. Why? Because they worship a moon god. Oh, no, they're Muslim. Oh, they're okay.
Are we supposed to be seeing back to when they built the golden calf?
Yes.
Is that a spoiler alert?
Yes. Well, not very spoilery. The other sense is it's their moon god idols, the gold moon god idols that even Muslims today will have in their decorations. The crescent moon that they have there. Why? Spoiler alert, because Muhammad, his tribe, worshiped the moon god. Ashtaroth. Was it called Ashtaroth because it's a different language? Just like we say Jesus, we don't say Yeshua. Same person though. So the husband and wife was Baal and Ashtar. They go on a pilgrimage to where? Where did Muslims go to prayer? Mecca. Why to Mecca?
Somebody's birthplace.
Okay, sure.
Everybody can remember.
And in there, it's Muhammad, right? It's where his tribe is. And in the center of that area is an altar.
With an asteroid in it.
Sure. And originally, that altar was to Baal and to the moon goddess. So they're still worshiping the same. It's the same spiritual war. Oh, no, it's Elohim. It goes to Allah. So they're saying God. They're not saying God. El could be Yahweh's other name, but El was also the name of the dad of Baal. It's not the same. We're not the same. It's Baal worship still. Oh gosh, that's the issue happening here. So that's what we see. And what do? They take their idols, they take their moon idols, and they give them to Gideon. You're like, Gideon, watch out for those idols. Gladly they replied, and they spread out their cloaks, and each threw the gold earring as he gathered from their plunder, and it weighed as much as 43 pounds, not including royal ornaments and pendants and purple clothing and kings of Midian and chains and around their necks, and a whole bunch of stuff. Then Gideon made a sacred chestplate, armor of gold, and put it in his hometown. And soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves and worshipped it. Why? Because they're like, look how the armor of Gideon. It was his armor. Oh gosh.
Was that another case where it should have, like, it's like so many, where it's like going good, ooh.
Yes.
Because destroying them, melting down those items of worship to foreign gods, melting them down, purifying them, turning them into something, that's good.
That's good.
But then they start worshiping that item.
Yes. And if only they had the tabernacle. Oh, they had the tabernacle. When did the gold go to the tabernacle?
Not for a long time.
Oh, wait, that might be a problem right there. Yes.
It's like in Lord of the Rings, where they first kill Sauron, and then they have the ring up, and so they've killed Sauron, which is the first bad thing, but then they don't do the second thing, which is throw the ring.
Yes.
Fire, and then the ring comes back later.
That's the sense. That is the sense. Very good.
They're
Parallel.
worshiping false gods in
Already. Yeah, and it gets even faster. So then the story of this is the story of the Israelites defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's lifetime, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. Then Gideon, son of Joash, returned home. He had 70 sons born to him. Well, that sounds great. Boy, his wife was tired. Wives. Oh, wait a second. Not supposed to multiply wives. That's a problem. And because he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shechem. Oh, no. Shechem, by the way, Shechem is in Ephraim. So she's an Ephraimite, probably. Who gave birth to a son, named him Abimelech. Okay, do you guys remember what Abimelech means? Ooh,
Notice that name comes back up.
it does a lot. We've heard Abimelech a lot. Molech means king. Abimelech means high king. So here he's like, I'm not going to be king. We're not going to be king. None of us are going to be king. Well, she has a kid and names him High King. Well, I bet you that's good. Spoiler alert, next week we're going to learn about what happens to High King. Gideon died when he was very old, and he was buried in the grave of his father, Joash, at Ephraim, the town that means grave, in the land of the clan of Abiezer, right? And then soon after Gideon died, the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping the images of Baal, making Baal Berath their god. Okay. Do you guys remember when I had that picture or a picture like that? It's one of the standing stones that Joshua sets up in Shechem. To the north, there's one mountain. There's the mountain of blessings and the mountain of cursings where they read the Bible, right? Read the Torah again. So that right there, that's one of the standing stones. There's two of them. Those standing stones are in front of a building. And that building, which originally was likely a temple of Yahweh, or a place for Yahweh to meet, because the tabernacle was at Shechem for a while. You'll never guess, that temple, by this time, is called the Temple of Baal Berath. So that place that should have been for the covenant of Yahweh became a covenant to Baal. That's what Baal. That means Baal Berath means the covenant of Baal.
Let's put there to be a reminder.
Yep.
And they built
They retooled it.
a monument to another guy.
Monument to another guy.
I love that in 2 verses there's so many red flags. In just
Yes.
2 verses there's so many red.
Well, that's like the cathedral in the middle of the Hagia Sophia, right? The cathedral in the middle of Constantinople. When the Muslims came in and butchered the Christians in Constantinople and turned it into a mosque, they wiped out everything they could reach. They couldn't reach very high, so they wiped out all the images of all the Christian images as far as they could reach, right? But up high, there's still a cathedralness to it. But they turned something that's supposed to be pointing to Yahweh to pointing to Baal. Oh, but they're Muslims. It's not. It's one God. It's the same. Same. They forgot the Lord their God, and who had rescued them from all their enemies, surrounded them. Nor did they show any loyalty to Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, despite all the good that he had done. So this is spoiler for next week, to be continued. Exciting! I wish people weren't so stupid. Or I wish stupid would hurt more. I don't know which one. There's a sense where we really do need to wake up. If only all of these people had listened to Barak and Deborah when they said, wake up! There's a spiritual war going on, and they keep falling asleep, and the battle keep rising up right where they're at. And it does 1,500 years later, when Jesus is running through that area, and he does even today.
100 years later.
2,000 years later. Oh, if only we would be. The good thing about the Bible is we continue to see folks making bad choices, but we see God's long suffering with those people making bad choices. And the fact that when they do make good choices, God does amazing things through them.
Even when they make half a good choice.
Even when they make half a good
I was
choice.
gonna say it's just the one thing. It's
Stepping
choosing
down.
Yahweh. That's all it is. That's what it all comes down to.
Yep,
It's not
choosing.
about being perfect. It's not about because you look at all the heroes of the Bible, they were all screw ups.
Yep.
They all made terrible. We saw Gideon here doing some pretty boneheaded things.
God doesn't leave
But
him.
his obedience ultimately was to Yahweh.
And we do see that. We see that. We see the problem of pride. We see the risk of pride, the ever-present risk of pride. But we also see that reliance on Him, even a small group of people that are faithful to God, can transform their nation. 300 people freed their nation.
It's a matter of choosing a side.
120 people in the upper room changed the world. You don't have to be mega church. You don't have to be a mega of this. You just have to be faithful. As a matter of fact, God loves to work through small stuff because it shows His power. Let's pray. Father God, we thank You for Your word, which continues to challenge and lift us up and guide us. Lord, we ask, just help us as You give us vision like Gideon and wisdom as to what to do. Lord, give us the courage to step forward in Your strength and be agents of change. Lord, we do know that there's a spiritual work going on for the souls of our friends, of our neighbors, of our loved ones, of our family members. Lord, help us participate in that war in a way that helps them find You. Lord, may we all learn the lesson that we need to come to You. May we learn that Your superiority to any other system, Your superiority to all things, Lord, so that we can submit to You and that we can come back into that right relationship that doesn't destroy our lives, but instead gives life and abundant life to those of us and those around us. Lord, we thank You. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, as you go out, I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. I pray that He makes His face shine upon you. I pray that He's gracious to you and that He grants you peace. Amen.